My name is Mark Holcomb from Oak Grove High School. I'm going to talk to you today about building a football program from the ground up. Give you a little bit of background, kind of where I was at. I'm a high school coach for 18 years. I was at Oak Grove High School, excuse me, I was at North Davidson High School for about 15 years, and a new school opened up in our area named Oak Grove. And as a coach who's been in the profession for almost 30 years, it was a pretty neat idea to open up a new program. So I'm just going to talk about some of the things that we did when we started our program, and I think this could work for not only a new program, but for any program that's out there. And just to give you maybe a little bit of validity, I guess, where this is all my contact information. So if anybody has a question, you can hit me up on my email or Twitter, any of those, and I'll be glad to answer any questions I can get to you. I'm going to go through this really quickly. This is our first look at our 5-year period, and this is when we got there in 2017 and 18. We were ninth and 10th grade only. We had no varsity team, and then everything kind of goes from there. We the next year we added juniors, and then year 3 was our first year with seniors. And this just gives you a little bit of a snapshot of our record, kind of maybe to add some validity to what we're talking about. But you see that we were 5 and 6 the first year with no seniors, and barely missed the playoffs in our by one game. The next year 8 and 1 in our conference. So year 3, our first year with seniors, we were conference champs, and then we've been finished second in our conference the past 2 years. So we literally began in a storage room. The middle school had been built a couple years earlier, and the high school was built, and we did not have our facilities completed. So we started summer workouts at the middle school. All of our equipment, everything, shoulder pads, helmet, everything was put in a closet. And that's where we worked out of actually the first 8 games of that season. We finally played a game on what would be our high school field. I think it was game 8 or game 9 of the JV season. And fast forward, 3 years later, we ended up being conference champs. So I feel like some of the things we're doing are applicable to a lot of programs. And we had no locker room. The only complaining we really heard was probably from our coaches. We had no weight room. We had to do everything with bands and med balls. And, a lot of our kids just, didn't really know any different. We're putting 2 programs together that had been in the past have been successful. But we shared our practice field with a middle school every day at 4 o'clock. We had to literally get on a bus and go from one place to the next, put our kids on a bus and go over to the middle school. And no game field, middle school game field. All these things are just kind of, giving you some groundwork about where our program's at. One of the toughest things I think about this school is we were trying to get 2 communities that were established communities, like we're talking schools that were built in the 50s, and parents have been there before. We're trying to bring in a new school, which is in our area. The community involvement is pretty big, so it was tough. So we had to take 2 old communities and kind of make it a new one. So one of the things we did to get our kids involved, the local kids, is we did a little league football camp, and it's something we had done at the past school. But we felt like it was real important to get as many kids as we could at that camp, and get as many kids on our field as possible. So we scholarship kids, and brought them in and told them we weren't worried about money. We were just trying to get as many kids as we could out there. Then we started doing some new things, some new ideas. Here's where this comes in. We did a middle school signing day, and obviously we took this from other programs, but we went down to the middle school and took our jerseys down there and had kids sign almost like a letter of intent, to be committed to us, and took pictures and posted those on social media. We went down to the middle school and did workouts for them during the spring, and then during the summer. Something that we had not done in the past is we went down and worked out with our middle school kids during the summer. And just these kids wanting to get up involved in our program and wanting to work, we just had to give them a chance to do that. And a lot of our coaches were able to do that. Myself and other coaches, went to the Little League games in our area, practices. I took players to the practices and had the players talk. and this was something new to our players too, obviously, because they were all new to the community, but some of them had played at the this level with our two community teams. So it was a pretty neat thing for them to work on some of their leadership skills also, but just for us to be seen and to get our brand out there as much as possible. We brought our little league uh, coaches and our middle school coaches together, brought them pizza and just brought them in and sat them down and, talked about our vision for what the program was going to be and how they could help us. And, one of the main things we talked to them about was we're not really concerned about what offense you run, what defense you run. We're just concerned about you getting as many kids involved in the program as you can and letting them have fun. So I didn't want to micromanage, our little league teams and our middle school team. I wanted to get them to feel a part. We added all those guys to our huddle account so they could watch video, they could watch practice, our game videos, in any way that they wanted to be involved on a Friday night. So we've got some guys working our chains. We had some coaches on the sideline. So just trying to get bring our little league and middle school program together, because those are the kids that are going to be feeding us. And now we're starting to see some of the dividends pay off of those. We had a little league and middle school night where, the kids wear their jerseys and get around on the field with the players. And, this was pretty neat for them because, again, we're establishing everything we did was new the first year. So by having the middle school and little league night and having those kids on the field with us, I thought that was pretty neat and it gave them something to look forward to in the future. Now, I'm one that goes down to as many middle school games as I can. Went down to baseball tryouts a couple weeks ago and through batting practice. We go to as many middle school football games and basketball games as we can. I've been to the middle school banquet, the athletic banquet, and spoke at that also. So as many things as I can do to get the kids to know me, and the kids not only to know me but my assistant coaches, I think is a big time drawing card for our program. Here's one of the pictures that we took. Our little league team actually played in a championship game, and so we went out there and took pictures of those guys, and just wanted to do that. Our little league camp, this is our first little league camp, and some of these kids now are at our school and playing. So what we did is we got some local businesses to sponsor the shirts, and we just said as long as we can get the kids there, we wanted to just get as many as we can and get our coaches involved. So that was a pretty neat one. Took our players on the left-hand side here. We took our players to the elementary schools to read. Again, some of these kids had gone to this elementary school, but this elementary school fed into a different high school. So we wanted these kids that are going to be feeding into our school to start being able to, identify with Oak Grove. Here's a picture of our middle school signing day, the first one that we had. And the neat thing about it is some of these players are seniors now and are getting ready to graduate. So that was it seems like just the other day, but it's been almost 4 years with those kids. Now, it's in terms of changing up our schedule, we did things a little bit different from a standpoint of watching film with the kids, and our practice schedules were a little bit different. Now, we are fortunate to have an advisory period during our day, and it's a 30-minute period during the school day for tutoring. And so our kids came, and the ones that were doing their schoolwork and did good, they came to our classes, and we watched film of the other of our game first. Our last game was on Monday, and then so after practice, or excuse me, after school, we would have what we called our Monday message, and we would just do some character building, some team unity, some team bonding things, and then we would have a little bit of video for the other team. And then Monday was a pretty short practice for us in terms of that. So we changed that and tried to film as much of the things as we can. Tuesday was our special teams video right after school, and then we went to practice. And our Tuesday was obviously, we play on Friday, so Tuesday was our heavy tackle day. Wednesday we went straight out to practice. There's no film, so that was our day to kind of get the kids legs under them a little bit for the game week. Thursday, I think it's just like a lot of people, we play our JV games on Thursday, and our varsity practice is a glorified walkthrough, kind of a ghost game where we do all kinds of different situations on the field, and just keeping the kids as sharp there, and trying to be as 100% proficient with as we can on that day. And then Friday, our JVs would come in and watch film. Um, and then we would actually, the varsity kids would actually meet after we did our pregame meal, and we would watch more of the JV film, trying to create a culture of film watching, just as much as possible, get our kids into our video. And, by helping them learn how to watch video, we felt like it was going to, make them better later on, on the weekends, so they would figure out what they're looking for. Um, we do not meet on the weekends. We do everything through Google Drive. And if we ever needed to meet as coaches, we would do an early Monday morning meeting. But, with technology as much as it is right now, we share everything through Google Drive and all of our practice schedules, and, everything we do there. We're constantly talking to each other on Sundays. But I've been in those, meetings from 1 o'clock to 8 o'clock, and you feel like you're, it's just kind of drudgery. But we've done this since we first got at this school, and have felt like we're prepared to do that. And the no meetings are just something that we've established as coaches, and as we've added coaches and some coaches have moved on, we just continue to do this. Our Monday message, just some examples here. We spend usually about 30 minutes with our kids. The first year we had the kids write letters to their moms. We passed these out about halfway through the season. I actually mailed them to their parents. I was thinking to myself, this could be a good thing if we're struggling this year, with being our first year. Maybe that letter will come just at the right time when that mom's upset at us because we don't know what we're doing, or in the case that we were fortunate, we were having a good year. So it's just kind of a deal where the kids really came to practice the next day and said, my mom got that letter and she was real thankful. So just trying to teach those kids how to do things. We talked to them about the job of a teacher and the job of a coach. We talked to them about, how to shake hands, all kinds of different things, all kinds of different lessons that went on there. And that's something that we've carried through, and we're still doing that. We're doing that every Friday now during advisory. During Thursday and Friday before the game, a local pastor or our FCA representative would come in and talk to the kids, and we would try as much as possible to keep the same topic going that we talked about in our character message on Monday. It didn't always match up, but a lot of times it would. We're trying to, I think a lot of coaches, say, the word culture, and they use the word culture a lot. And I think culture is just, basically what you do every day. Culture is about relationships. We constantly preach to our kids that, they're probably not going to remember their record their senior year, but they're going to remember some of the relationships they built. And, we want, obviously, like a lot of people say, we want people to be, great young men, great fathers. And I think that's more important. And football is just kind of a vehicle that we use to get there. In terms of leadership, we kind of figured out that, our sophomores the first year were actually going to be the leaders their sophomore year, their junior year, and their senior year. So we had to figure out a way that we could kind of teach leadership to those kids, because it's hard when you have, sophomores to lead your team. So we broke our team down into kind of like squad leaders, kind of like the military. And we told our kids, anytime somebody on their team got in trouble, they had to do whatever punishment. They had to take it for that person, and the person who did it had to watch. So that was some positive peer pressure that worked out pretty well. We had weekly progress reports, and they turned those into their squad leaders. And everything we did had a point value. So the first team to get theirs in would get 10 points, the next team 9. And we'll talk about kind of how we track points a little bit later. We started workouts out of season at 6:30 a.m. We start school at 8, and we had an a.m. workout at 6:30 and then a p.m. workout at 3:15, and they could come to either whichever one they wanted to come to. And eventually we dropped the 3:15 one because all the kids wanted to come at 6:30 in the morning. And I guess it's because maybe they didn't know any other thing. They didn't know anything being different than that. So they just came at 6:30 and worked out. And, we have so many kids that are involved in other sports. So at 3:15, we want them out, doing whatever sport that they're doing, and I don't want them to have to pick between, football. We're a school of about 950 kids, so we need as many kids as we can playing, other sports. We track attendance and we post everything. We use that as a vehicle, I guess, to get our kids pressure each other as much as possible to kind of call each other out when we do attendance. We did something called the Grizzly Games, where the we had elected squad leaders, and they were elected by their teammates, and then they drafted players. We had a breakfast and uh, drafted those kids kind of like a snake draft, and we had morning workouts. We had something that we called April Morning, and basically we just had different kind of workout challenges to teach the kids, how to compete and how not to quit. And again, track those points. It was up to the Grizzly Games squad leaders to get their kids there, to make sure they had rides and to communicate with them. And then one day we had a donut challenge. We had asked, kind of tricked the kids a little bit and said, get your fastest kid. This is all about speed. And they walked out in the gym, and we had a big plate of donuts set up for them, so they had to race and kind of finish that. Just anything we can do to kind of build the teamwork. And the winning team, we're in the process now of getting the t-shirts for this year's team, and also we took them out to get pizza. So just trying to do that. Here's a look at our progress report, and one of the things we found out about our progress report is the teachers like something that they can bring to the coach, or they can tell the coach that the kids are doing what they're supposed to do or not doing it. And so it was something really simple that I got from another coach here in North Carolina, and it's the kids fill out their name, their date, the teacher name, the class, and all the teacher has to do is circle attendance yes or no, behavior yes or no, and put down the grade and any comments. And so this is what they would turn into their squad leader. And this is a good way to kind of create buy-in from your teachers, I think, for your program to help out, because obviously the majority of these kids are going to do something different besides play football in college. So we just want these kids to understand that their grades and behavior is the most important thing. Here's just a picture of our Grizzly game. So the guys at the top were our captains that were elected. And then they went through and drafted those. And this creates a little bit of maybe reality check for some kids when they look on here and see that they were drafted, maybe in the last round, and they're wanting to know why. And it's a good time to open up those conversations where you can say, well, they were concerned about your dependability, or they were concerned if you were going to be here or not, because we constantly preach to our kids that the most important ability is dependability. And if you're not here, it doesn't matter how fast you are or how strong you are, you got to be dependable, and you got to be accountable to your teammates. We do captains a little bit different. We pick an offensive captain, a defensive captain, and a scout team player of the week. And those kids get to not only go to midfield, but they also eat first. We have something that we call a wheel of consequences. And if the players get in trouble for anything in school, they have to spin the wheel. The teachers have spun the wheel for them before. Coaches can spin it. So this is different things, and I have a picture of it that I'll show you in a second. It's got a lot of different things on there, and these things have to be completed before practice starts. So it can't be something that kids waiting and maybe taking time off practice to get this done. They have to do those things before. Also borrowed the commitment continuum. I think it's from his last name's Jansen, I think, and it just talks a little bit about how committed are you? Are you committed, or are you just interested, in what's going on? We had the kids do the Big 400, and the Big 400 is something we did during the summer, and they had to log roll 100 yards, backpedal 100 yards, 5 and falls, and then the last one was bear crawl. And what we did is we got each kid that did this a t-shirt, and we called it Earn the Shirt. And we make a different one each year. And so the kids have to do this, and this is a tough thing, and they can't stop, and they can't take a knee, or and it's neat. We again post those pictures up of as many kids as we can that make it, and eventually everybody in our program gets that. And it might be 3 weeks later or 4 weeks later, but everybody makes that. And, just another way to spread our brand around school too. Here's a picture of our wheel of consequences. So if a kid gets a tardy for class and a teacher writes him up, so the kid will come down and he'll spin the wheel and it can land on any of those things. We've had teachers come down before and say, little Johnny was not, doing his work today in class, so I'd like to spin the wheel for him. And so teachers have done that before. Obviously, we as coaches, if we have any issues with kids not getting to practice on time, or, forgetting equipment or whatever it might be, we have something here. And what we tell our kids is, this is a consequence wheel. When you do something that's not right, you got to pay the consequences to it. And on here, we also have a free space. We say that sometimes when you do something, you might get away with it. But there's team activities on here, like a team burpee. Then there's just something for the person who did it. So again, you're taking a chance anytime. We're just trying to teach our kids that there are consequences to their actions. Here's some of the things that we've done. Started up when our kids were seniors. The seniors get to pick a teacher to wear their jersey, and they wear their jersey all day. And then at the end of the day, we come out to the field and take a picture, and again, post that on social media, post it on our school website. I think it's another way to create relationships. And on the right hand side here, you see Coach Smith is our strength and conditioning coach, and one of his guys picked him, so he put it up on his Twitter, and it was pretty neat thing. And our teachers really, you see a lot of tears those days when seniors come up to them and talk to them about the difference they've made in their life. Here's a picture of our commitment continuum, and it just goes from the left-hand side. These kids are compelled, and it goes all the way. If we ever get to meeting 3, then that's going to be a way we're going to exit a young man from our program. But most of our kids start off in the going through the motions. That's where we put them at. And then as they turn in their progress reports, as they come to the weight room, as they behave in school and do the things they're supposed to do, they can move either to the right or to the left. And obviously, if they're doing things that they're supposed to do, the goal is to try to get as many kids over to the compelled and committed as we can, as far as just being resistant. And obviously, you have kids that are just kind of interested in football and not really bought in and committed to what's going on. But this is something we post up too for our kids to see, and so they can kind of use positive peer pressure on each other. Pride points is something that we've done. Kids like competing for stuff, so we track points for everything. Attendance in the weight room. If you play another sport, you get points. If you turn in your progress report on time, you get points. If you turn in your physical on time, you get points. Any kind of community service, when we do our card sale fundraiser, if you are the first person to turn in all your money for your cards, you get points. And these points are used to rank our players. And what they do is the kids at the top of the point scale get to pick their number first. They get to pick their equipment out first. And then we have jobs for them at practice and games. And obviously, this is something that they want to do. Kids will do a lot of stuff for a number. They just really think about that number, and they'll compete against each other to try to figure out who's going to get, whatever number it might be. We post this stuff weekly, and if kids did not turn in their progress reports, then we did not let them work out. We put a list up of the kids that could not come, and so one of the first things they did is got those in, relatively pretty quickly, so they can come back out and work out with the team. And it's just like anything else. The kids who didn't turn them in were kids that were fringe kids that were either not all in, and so some of those kids would jump in the boat, and some of those kids would kind of jump out. And we had an all milk carton team too for anybody who was missing from workouts, and we posted that up too. So this is just an example of our spreadsheet that we use. So at the top, you see the dates that we had the weight room open, and then we would add the points up at the right. And then we had a kid in driver's ed, and obviously that was something that was excused. And if we had kids playing other sports, we would add those in the end. Here's some of the examples of jobs. We had guys like on the coaches crew that did jobs throughout for the coaches throughout the season. We had guys that cleaned up the varsity locker room, the JV locker room, the bathrooms, the buses, a lot of different things on that. This is the missing progress report list that we posted. And, it's real simple. If you don't have your progress report turned in, then you don't come back in. I was the only one who could go in and mark somebody off the list if they brought it in. And so, that list started off big, but got smaller each time. Here's our all milk carton team. These are guys that were missing. And, some of these guys decided to get, on board and start doing stuff. And some of these guys decided that they didn't, want to do workouts during the off season or do stuff during the summer. So they just decided they weren't going to come. I think one of the biggest things that has helped us is our advisory period. And I teach civics and economics during the day, so it was pretty easy, I think, to sell this. And our our administration does a great job with this. But this is a 30-minute period after first period every week, and you can use it for tutoring, for clubs, for making up work, whatever it may be, because a lot of our kids don't have a way to school before the bus gets there, and as soon as the bus gets there at 3:05, they're leaving school to go back, or they're involved in something else. But what we were able to do is we were able to meet with our kids, review film. Like right now during the spring, we have an offensive day, a defensive day, and then a team building day that we're doing right now, where everything is done in the gym. We're going to go out on the field as it gets a little bit warmer. We're able to do, we're doing walkthroughs now with our plays. We're installing stuff. So that's a big thing for us as coaches. But the most important thing is these kids are getting their grades done. Now, I'd be lying if I said that every kid on our team is in every advisory period, because they're not. And some of them, are making up work or doing what they have to do to get eligible. But I think that's, probably the most important thing. We were also able to sit down with our kids during advisory and explain to them what, core GPA was, look at a college requirements, the sliding scale, the average GPA of whatever college they were going into. So this helped us out with our kids in terms of the core GPA as opposed to the regular GPA. We taught our kids how to make highlight tapes on Huddle, explained the recruiting process to them, and just went through that. And then we obviously looked at the Huddle highlight tapes to see that, they were doing things the right way, but it gave us the time to do that. And then the skill development before we start spring practice, I think is, when we hit the field for spring practice, we should have pretty much all the alignments and all the plays installed. And so in the spring, we get about, I think we're getting 8 to 10 days this spring. So it'll be pretty much, a lot of reps for us. Big into social media. We have a coach on our staff whose wife works for a local college, and she came in and did photo shoots for our kids on picture day. And we just put as much stuff on social media as we could, game day graphics and just different things for our kids. And I think social media and today, if you're not out there, publicizing your kids and publicizing your program, then I think you're probably falling behind. And I think probably most schools know that by now. If you're going to get a new job or a new program, I want to put some non-negotiables in here. And I think that, number one, I work for a great administration. That's from the principal down to the AD, the assistant principals. I think that you need to, have a list of these, and this is a pretty good place to start. Again, I mentioned our athletic director, who was a college athlete and has been a coach, so that has helped out too. Other coaches, in terms of basketball coaches, baseball coaches, wrestling coaches, track, I think it's important to get those coaches involved and share a vision. I really feel like our school is, every program wants every other program to do well, and it's not just one program versus the other. I don't hire and fire anybody, but I think, being able to network and take qualified teachers to my administration and, again, teachers first and coaches second, I think that's helped us out too, because our administration has done a great job of hiring on-campus coaches for the football staff. We also have some off-campus coaches, middle school, elementary, community coaches that are volunteer. and we were able to bring some of those coaches in also. Uh, I went to the little league programs and did as much of my research as I could to see how the little league programs were going. The middle school was fairly new, just to see what was going to feed in, the kids that are feeding into the high school program. And I think as a head coach, it's my job to make sure that the coaches know what they're doing. But I think if you get coaches that care about kids, that are willing to be present and willing to work with each other, I think that they can learn stuff through clinics, and they can learn stuff through you and just sitting down with people and talking. And I think that's the most important thing, is the kids that are, coaches that are invested in the kids. And if you have good players, obviously that makes things a lot easier. And we're not in a box where we have a certain system that we have to do every single year. We're going to adapt to whatever players we have. The school I was at previously, a lot of defensive lineman type bodies. The school we're at now, a lot of linebacker type bodies. So we had to fit that and make sure that was going to be something that was going to be positive for our program. Middle school signing day has been a hit for us, just trying to bring things together here at the end. We post everything. We have basically a wall right outside the weight room that everything is on there, from maxes to attendance at the weight room. We put as much stuff as possible because I think peer pressure is something that works. I think kids want to, when they see their name up on the wall, they want to see the good things beside it. We are big into slogans to put on our Twitter and our social media. We are Oak Grove, so one of the first things we put is BOG, and then the second thing is we're the Grizzlies. So Bear Down was our second slogan that we've had, and we've remained consistent with those throughout the years. We communicate with our kids through Remind 101, and we talk to our kids about making sure that they communicate with us. We will communicate with parents, but I want to communicate with the kids. There's no excuse. Every kid's got a cell phone or access to a cell phone, so they can, do things with us. Google Drive is amazing. Helps us with our practice schedules, our scripts, any breakdown we have of the week. All that stuff goes in our Google Drive folders. We share those with our kids. And I think this is one thing that I learned as I've gone through coaching, is you have to be willing to suspend any player. It doesn't matter if they're a good player, bad player, or otherwise. And that's during the season, and that's during the off season. If a kid's not willing to do what they need to do during the off season, in terms of turning their progress reports in terms of coming to the weight room, staying involved, doing what they're supposed to, then as a coach, I think, you have to go to that player and say, you don't need to come back until you do X, Y, and Z, and you get these things completed. And I think that's something that as a young coach, maybe I probably wasn't as willing to do with good players, but I think it's got to be any player on your team. They all have to, they're not all treated equally, because they're all not equal. But I think you have to be willing to stand up to those guys. And we do an end of season Google form for our players and send that out about our coaches. This is just a generic Google sheet that goes out, and our coaches fill it out and our kids fill it out. And you would be, amazed at some of the interesting stuff that you get back from it. And it just talks about individual coaches, talks about individual, we're not looking for scheme answers from our kids, but, just things that they have. Like some of our kids said we need to tackle more. Some of our kids said that we need to, go live a little bit more, or do some more one-on-one stuff. So that helps us as coaches to look at that. And it's just a picture of our facility that we have. Blessed to be there, and just looking forward to the challenges that this school brings. So there's my contact information. Again, if you have any questions, you can reach out to me on the email or hit me up on Twitter, either one of those. And thank you very much. Yeah, well, one of the first things we do as soon as the game is uploaded to Huddle on a Friday night or a Thursday night, either one, JV or varsity, we share that with our entire team. And that's before we put any data into it, before we do anything, any of the breakdown. So that goes straight out to them so that they can have access to that. A lot of our players will go home after the game, grab something to eat, hang out with each other, and go to somebody's house and they'll watch the game. Then what we do is we try to break things down into to the clips. Like I'll say, try to teach kids how to watch film. Like I'm coaching the offensive line, and I say, guys, you need to watch number one yourself, but number two, when you're watching an opposing team, you need to watch the guy who's going to be across from you. So you need to, I think, because kids have the tendency to want to watch film and just kind of they don't see the small picture. They see the big picture of everything. Like, wow, look at that pass or look at that hit. When we're trying to get them to break things down as much as possible. Now, when we come in, uh, so the short answer to your question is, we expect our kids to watch film. We don't do a test with them. Not every kid in our program watches film, but we will also have kids that will send us a text message 30 minutes after the game and say, hey, coach, watch clip 67. Watch what I did to that guy. Or I went the wrong way on this clip. Or, so kind of creating that dialogue, and we're going to respond to them and send that back to them. But then when we're starting to watch the opponent, we spend Monday pretty much in advisory watching our film, and we break up in offense, defense, varsity, and JV. They all break up. So I will take mainly the offensive line and work with those guys, and then we'll try to split up by position as much as possible. We can't always do that, but and then spend time watching those guys in film. Then kind of get, I guess, the good, the bad, and the ugly. That's what we kind of create for those guys, where we can watch video of them doing things right, video of them doing things wrong, and we've even made a loaf tape. We brought it in and we set all the kids down on a Monday and said, is this, when we cut the film on, is this what you want people seeing? And just, called out kids and said, you're loafing, you're not running the football, you're not blocking to the whistle. So making that part of it important, but also making, when we film practice, that's uploaded right after practice and sent straight home to the kids. If we ever get a rainy day, we're going to watch film. I mean, we're going to spend as much time as we can in the film room. I think sometimes, especially later in the season, it's good to get a day off from just being outside and being, wear and tear on your body and watch film. So hope that answers your question. I think during the COVID year, we weren't able to use our locker room and weren't able to maybe socialize as much as we could. And we had some players that sent back information after that just said that they didn't feel like we were as close knit as a team as we needed to be because of those things. And we've also had, like I said before, the kids say we need to tackle more in practice. We've had kids say, you need to hold us more accountable for some of the things we do. And I think kids in general want to be that way. Now, there were probably some kids in that survey that would argue that, but I think they wanted to be held more accountable for the things they were doing on the field at practice. Just trying to get things better at practice. We took our kids to watch the local college here at Wake Forest is close by. We took them to watch a practice there just to let them know, hey guys, we do the same things they do, and we had some comments about that, doing a little bit more stuff that was one-on-one, doing a little more competitive stuff. So I think that was neat. I've never had anybody, we've never had any negative comments taking shots at, specific coaches or program or anything like that. So I think that's probably a good thing.